This week, let's talk about my first-hand experience with Matt Colville's villain actions, some general thoughts about how to design boss fights, and then a specific example of collaborating with a player to achieve a very interesting narrative moment that is dramatic for everyone, including that player. Hey everybody, it's Nick. I know we missed a week last week. It was American Thanksgiving here in the States, where I am from, obviously, and so I didn't do a video last week, couldn't get around to it. I kept trying to film it and wanting to film it, and it just didn't happen, so I figured have a lazy week. But we are back here, and so let's go ahead and just jump into this week, just talking about what we did last week in my D&D session. When last we left our heroes. So my players are sort of a special forces group working for the nation of Okrin, which is led by Emperor Ares on the continent of Antar. I know it's a lot of proper nouns, and all of them begin with A. Sorry about that. But that's just the way it goes. They're a special forces team working for Okrin, and Okrin is trying to take over the world. Basically, Emperor Ares strongly believes that something is coming. He doesn't know what it is, but he knows that the continent will be taken over and destroyed if they're not united under one banner. And so they tried the diplomatic approach, and that did not work, and so they are trying the military option, and the players are assisting with it. And on the side, the players are sort of working on their own goals, accomplishing their own things, and that is what the focus of this previous session was on, one of those sort of side missions or personal backstory quests that the players were working on. The character Sorel is a warlock, played by my friend Walter, and what he has been asked to do by his patron is go around to all these different black stone obelisks and inscribe some sort of a rune on them. He doesn't really know why, he's just been going around and doing it. And every time he does it, he is granted powers and abilities or attributes, and then given a vision of where the next obelisk is, and on to the next one. And he knows that there are 7 in total. He knows that there is another individual who is also what is called an awakener. He doesn't know what he's awakening, doesn't know what's happening with that. He's found and met up with this other awakener and was like, what is this whole thing going on? He's learned his patron's name is Karshimis. Doesn't know what that means, doesn't know who that is. And so he's trying to figure all this out, put all these pieces together. And what he has heard from the other awakener is that Karshimis is a powerful good entity, a very powerful high-level angel or good deity, and Karshimis has been trapped away by evil creatures, and so what they need to do is they need to free Karshimis so that Karshimis is able to help people and do all the good things that he wants to do. And so obviously Sorel is a little suspicious about this because that hasn't always been his experience with Karshimis. After interacting with Karshimis for the first time, Sorel sort of had this alter ego that was part of his personality, an entity that calls themselves Mavros, and Mavros sometimes will take over and just start doing things. It's not quite possession, but sort of like an alternate personality. So Sorel is somewhat suspicious, but not suspicious enough to not light up all the obelisks, because he is getting cool rewards every time he does that. And so the party has been going around and doing all of this, and this week, they light the last obelisk. So the session starts with the players sort of on the beach overlooking the ocean, and they know that just offshore, underneath the waves, is the last obelisk. And so they sort of set aside their child that they rescued earlier. It's a different session, you gotta go watch that, Thomas, and they cast water breathing on everyone, including Thomas, so he doesn't drown if he wanders into the water accidentally. And they have everybody, and they sort of set them aside, they get water breathing cast on everyone, and say, alright, let's go in. We've got water breathing for 24 hours, let's go deal with this obelisk. We don't know what's down there, we haven't done any research or exploration, because who does that? So let's just run in face first and hope for the best. A quote my players have actually said multiple times. So they run in and they are confronted by an Aboleth. Super creepy. I love Aboleth. Very interesting. The Enslave ability is very hit or miss depending on if you are casting it on a player who is willing to play along or is trying to subvert the intentions of the Aboleth. And if you have players who are willing to play along and go with it, they can be very fun creatures indeed. And so this was the first time I had really gotten to utilize Matt Colville's villain actions. Incredibly useful, interesting system, basically to make Single boss monsters in 5th edition D&D, much more threatening or interesting without being just more hit points and more damage, just giving them more options, bonus actions, reactions, and then these villain actions that they do, which are basically legendary actions that are queued to specific rounds. So round 1, this thing happens, round 2, this thing happens, and so on. It gives a shape and a form to the combat. I think going forward, even creatures that I don't really, amp up like this, I will probably use the villain action system instead of legendary actions because I think it's much easier to remember. I don't know about you, but for me as a DM, when I have legendary actions to worry about, I often forget about them. You're like, oh right, hang on, he's got a legendary action he's going to do this time. They don't use all of their legendary actions. I forget about them. They're not always interesting, and so I'm probably going to, every time I have a legendary creature, just take those legendary actions and add some new ones, flavor them differently on my own, and twist them into villain actions because I think it gives some shape and some narrative and some form to the combat as a whole as you have it progressing in different ways. So I will link the description or just put it in text in the description below what my Aboleth was. I threw on a bonus action and a reaction and all the villain actions and everything, so you can take it and tweak it and use it and hate it and love it, whatever you want to do with it. But that is the one that I used, and it was very interesting. I made quite a mistake as I was planning and preparing this villain. All but one of my players are proficient in wisdom saving throws, and guess what the only saving throw the Aboleth got to queue off of was? Did you guess wisdom? Because it was a wisdom. They all had proficiency in wisdom saving throws except for the rogue, and of course the Aboleth is pretty much only targeting wisdom. So, if you are going to be planning boss fights and things like that, it's important to remember what your players are good at. Are your players all really good at wisdom saving throws? Well, then maybe don't throw a single creature at them that only targets wisdom. That being said, it did make the players feel really cool. It made the players feel strong and neat and powerful as they were able to constantly make their saves and ward off the creature. Sometimes it's really good to have the players go up against something that they are good at defeating so that they can feel more powerful. They feel that sense of progression and sense of power as heroes. It can be really interesting to do that. So that was sort of an unintentional consequence of my own poor planning, was the players got to feel really cool and powerful as they relatively easily defeated this Aboleth. It was very scary sometimes, but they were never in any real danger, I thought. So anyways, they fight the Aboleth, defeat the Aboleth eventually. I think it tried to run off and failed, but yeah, they eventually defeated the Aboleth, and then he carves in the rune to the last obelisk, and then all of a sudden, they feel themselves being pulled towards the surface. I described it like there was a rope around their waist, an invisible rope around all of their waists, and they were being pulled backwards. And they were pulled from the water up into the air, and pulled backwards, and they got to turn around and sort of see where they were going, and they were going towards this inland sea that they had been near before, and there's an island on it, and on that island is a volcano, and they went towards the volcano, into the mouth of the volcano, and there they saw the fruit of Sorel's labor from lighting the obelisks. As they make their way into the mouth of the volcano, they land on a rocky ledge above the volcano's lava, and they see quite a bit of things in front of them. There's a large pile of bones in the middle of these 7 braziers that are all lit, and the pile of bones has like shackles and chains all over it that seem to link to the braziers. Around this, there's sort of a half circle formed of a bunch of what can best be described as cultists of a lot of different races and species and creature types, some of them even being undead or shadowy. This is clearly not good news for our heroes, and so they sort of are gathered around, they're trying to figure out what's going on, and then the cultists all stop as the singular beam of white light seems to meet from 7 points far away and descend into the mouth of the volcano. These are the lights from all of the obelisks that had been lit. The light shines directly upon the pile of bones. The braziers are all extinguished, and so are the chains around this pile of bones. And then all the cultists seem to turn around and notice the player characters for the first time, but pretty much only paying attention to Sorel, and one of them says, "Ah, hello. We are the cult of Karshimis. Welcome, Awakener. You are here, you succeeded in everything you were trying to do. You have awakened the champion of Karshimis. The champion of Karshimis, which will be your form when you relinquish this old flesh thing that you have now. This will be your new vessel, so that you can be powerful enough to go and free Karshimis from the dimensional shackles which bind him. At this point, the players are pretty freaked out because they're trying to figure out what on earth is going on. So they start to ask some questions. Who's Karshimis? You seem to know a lot about him. Who's Karshimis? And the cult explains Karshimis is a long dead or forgotten Titan. The Titans in my setting were old primordial evil entities that were so bad that when they walked the earth, the gods had to team up, evil, good, and neutral alike, had to team up and unify to take down all the Titans. And then after which time the gods couldn't get along, and so they banished one another to separate planes of existence where they, hang out and keep each other separated. Basically, the gods can't walk among the mortals through any means other than angels, demigods, avatars, things like that. And so that is how the Titans were vanquished, but they were said to be all killed. But they weren't. Some were put into an eternal slumber, some were shackled, some were sent to far realms, some were killed, but not all of them. And so this is one of those Titans. They find out that Karshimis is shackled through these dimensional chains or dimensional shackles that take place on various planes of existence, and Sorel's job as the champion of Karshimis will be to go and free these shackles from Karshimis so that the Death Lord, the Land Swallower, the Life Eater can be freed. And players all very quickly realize this is bad news. But Sorel's hesitation may be his undoing. The cult presses and says, it's time to take up the mantle. You have rightfully earned your place as the champion of Karshimis. Don't you want to take your new form? And they sort of gesture at this pile of bones, which the players all start to realize are dragon bones. Sorel is hesitating and stalling, and basically they give him one final option. Aren't you going to take it? And before Sorel can answer, Mavros takes over. And this was me taking control of Walter's character. And Mavros says, snooze you lose, and seeps out of Sorel's body and infuses some sort of energy into this skeletal dragon, which stands up and is now possessing Mavros's entity. Mavros is this dragon, this Dracolich. And through conversation with Sorel and the new Dracolich Mavros, Sorel's trying to figure out, Mavros, who are you? What are you? Why are you? And Mavros says, you haven't figured it out by now? You made me. Thank you for all that, by the way, because it was your panic, your fear after meeting Karshimis that made you create me. I'm you, but better in every way. I'm not bogged down by friends, relationships, morality, anything like that. I can do what needs to be done. And all along through your whole journey, I've been the one doing what needed to be done. And now I'm finally powerful enough to do everything that needs to be done. So this is sort of a gut punch. This entity that had been in Sorel for all these months was sucked out of him, and it was his creation. Now this creation is powerful and very evil and about to go set free something else that's very evil. The players all realize, especially with Thomas, who was also there with them, that they cannot fight all of this. They have to leave now. But Mavros isn't done. Mavros, the Dracolich, champion of Karshimis, says, last chance, Sorel. Are you in? Or are you going to turn your back on Karshimis, who's given you all this power? And Sorel looks at his friends, looks at the cultists, and says, I'm out. And then I describe to Walter how he loses this connection with Karshimis. It seems to be completely gone, as is his connection to all of his warlock abilities. He can't cast any more spells, he can't use any more invocations. For all intents and purposes, He's a regular person with a lot of hit points. And this further reinforces the idea that the party cannot fight the battle that may come. And so they pull out their final scroll of teleportation and say, we gotta go somewhere, anywhere. And they try to go to the point where they think the headwaters are in Renora, the city sanctuary that they're looking for are in Renora, and they roll on the chart to see if they can get out. And the secret is, I did not tell the players what the result of that roll is. So we're all going to find out together next week. Where did they go when they rolled on that chart to see if they got to the place they're trying to get to, or there was some sort of a mishap, or they get to a different place altogether? We're going to find out because the players immediately left. Basically trying to get out to find somewhere else where they can set up and try to figure out what is going on. So now my players are possibly somewhere near Renora with their other, Ares Okrin mission over here, but also we have to worry about this world-ending titan that we might have just set loose. Uh-oh. So the players are at a crossroads. It'll be very interesting to see what they do over the next 2 sessions, after which we will take quite a bit of a break. And we will not be back until late January, early February. So it will be very interesting to see, where do the players go? What do they do? How does Sorel deal with having no powers and abilities? Which, by the way, most of this was things that I had talked about with Walter beforehand. He knew there was going to be the option on the table for him to accept an offer for Karshimis, and he would become this powerful champion and probably be evil, and he would lose his character as an NPC, and I would take them over. Or Sorel would say no, turn his back on Karshimis, and lose his abilities. He didn't know what the nature of the offer would be, the circumstances, the cult, the fact that Karshimis is a titan. None of those things he knew. He knew there'd be an offer. Are you in or are you out? And if you're out, it means you lose all your warlock abilities, and if you're in, then it means I take your character because now you are evil and powerful and an NPC. So this was me trying to find a balance between, okay, Walter, there's going to be a really interesting set of choices that'll come up here, but I don't want to completely blindside you with, you either lose your character or lose all of your abilities. That seems like a rough choice to be blindsided by. And so I let him know that's on the table, and he's like, okay, I'll try to think about ways that I might find a new patron or a new class or anything like that. We talked about ways that it could work. Him having no abilities, what that would look like, what it would mean, how long he would be in that circumstance. And I was very vague with some of these answers, but I wanted him to know that it'll be fun no matter what. It will be fun no matter what. I'm not going to yank all your powers. You're a commoner who's level 0. You have half a hit point and no abilities, no proficiencies. I didn't want him to think this is going to be a miserable experience for an indefinite period of time. I wanted him to know some of what he'd be getting into depending on what he said. Because even though Sorel wouldn't have known any of those things, and Walter wouldn't have known any of those things, it's still a game that my friends have to play, and I don't want to blindside them, even if it is for the sake of the narrative or because it'd be realistic. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be a game. And so I wanted him to know what are the choices on the table and what vaguely would those look like. But I also wanted to surprise him with some of those details. So it will be very interesting watching him kind of cope with, I don't have just things I have to go do. I have to figure out for myself, what are my next steps? It's entirely open-ended for Sorel, and his very action-oriented goals have finished now. But his options have opened up significantly to go find a new patron or deity or train as a fighter or something. But he's going to have to figure out, what does he want to do, and why does he want to do it? And is he going to stop the things he's set in motion, or is he going to run away from them? Let's all find out together. I'm very much looking forward to seeing how my players handle all of this and sort of what their next steps are, where they go from here. I've got lots of interesting ideas for the next few sessions, but we'll see what they get to. In the meantime, I'm really excited to see how Walter plays with this idea, see how all the players react to Sorel, how they treat him. Did they know if he was in on it or not in on it? It'll be very interesting seeing how it all unfolds going forward. But thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.